Our pleasure to welcome back our longtime friend and broadcast partner, former head coach at BYU, the one who restored order to a program that went 1-25 the year before he got here. An honor to have Steve Cleveland back on the Wise Guys. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with both of you.
Do we still have to call you coach after all these years since we're all friends?
You can still call me coach.
We'll call you coach.
So, and could we still call you Cleve? Because that's what we always
Sometimes we'll call you Cleve.
That's what we always say.
Sometimes we'll say, hey, you.
I don't know that anyone's called me Steve in a long time.
Nobody calls you Steve. We call you Cleve. We call you Coach.
Yeah.
Well, we've been on the road with Coach Cleve for many years, and gone down to did the tournament, and we worked together in television. And
Hey, put that microphone right under your chin.
yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we saw
Did
down.
you wear shoes? Oh, yes, good. Coach doesn't have shoes on either.
Well, yeah, that's one of the house rules.
Yeah, see, like people can see mine, Coach. Yeah, we never wear shoes on the show. That's the kind of cash atmosphere we have. So I'm glad to see that you're
Plus,
relaxed. And
we don't want
here.
Jack's wife. Jack's wife catches us wearing shoes down here. That's
then
it for us.
Then the show's over. Show's over.
So we saw Dallin Hall struggle in the loss to Kansas State, and then we've also seen games where he's been brilliant. You've had a lot of point guards over your career. How important is point guard play this time of year as you're closing out the seedings of the conference tournament with the big dance?
Yeah, obviously it's very important. I mean, Dallin has a very high basketball IQ.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the issue here. Early on in the season, I saw him where he was dealing with some injuries. In fact, as I watched the games this weekend, I thought that maybe he was ill and that he had a respiratory problem, or I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but he did not look like the competitive, aggressive mindset and in charge. He's just a guy that's been in charge and handled it quite well. So that is a little bit alarming going into this time of the year where you have big games in conference play. You're preparing for a tournament that you're going to play in another week or two, and then the NCAAs, because you're going to be in all those tournaments.
They kind of just quietly, and we've mentioned it a couple times because we're close enough to it to know, they have had some kind of a bug go through this basketball team twice.
Really?
Yeah, so like literally affected almost the whole team once, and it seems like they got better for about a week, and then it went through the whole team again. And Travanel has had illness, Ali Khalifa's had Dallin has had illness, and that's interesting you mentioned that, because one thing you can count on from Dallin Hall is just like effort at a very high level, and he looked gassed a little bit. And people are like, oh, is it because the season's gotten so long and they're out on the road? I don't think so with him.
No.
I don't know that, but I know that they have. And I love the fact that nobody really knows about that, because they have never used that as an excuse.
No. Dallin has all the intangibles covered. I mean, he does all the things on the court and off the court with his teammates that he's created a confidence in this group. Dallin was a missionary in Fresno when I was a YSA bishop. And so I spent some time with him, went out to lunch a few times with him, and enjoyed his company. And I could just tell that he had that aggressive mindset. Very tough-minded young man, but respectful, and he's the kind of guy that I could see bringing a group together. I mean, Dave and I were talking about this earlier. We go back a year or 18 months, and one of the biggest problems with the program was just the locker room and just having that chemistry and understanding roles, and all of a sudden, they go on a summer trip, they do all the things you want to do. Coach Pope spent a lot of time in hiring new assistants and really has a presence there where you go, this is a great culture. This is a great chemistry. These guys liked each other. I've been a few practices and I've been around them, but for the most part, I love this group of young people.
Yeah.
But for Dallin, and I it's hard to speculate on this, because if he is ill, oftentimes coaches are pretty quiet about illnesses and injuries.
And we don't know that, by the way. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. So let's say that he's healthy. And his body, he's probably tired and worn out, and he's going to need nutrients to do all those kinds of things. I will be shocked if he doesn't come out against Kansas and play really well. Listen, they're playing at Kansas.
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for a cakewalk. I mean,
yeah,
and
exactly.
Kansas has had their own problems during the course of the year. This isn't. They've not met expectations.
Dave mentioned they just won without Kevin, but he is their leading scorer. This is a 19.5 rebound, 4 assist guy they're missing.
Yes.
That's not just nobody that they're missing. And they're very deep and very talented, but they're missing a big-time guy in this game tomorrow night.
We've seen them be vulnerable, Kansas I'm speaking of, where they didn't come out and compete. And I can remember a comment that was made regarding the new league, and it was one of those things where Bill Self says, man, he thought BYU and the new schools, those were going to be automatic wins and 2 wins and whatever.
Right.
And he said, that's not the case now. I can see that this is a completely different creature here, and that it's going to be competitive night in and night out. So I think for Dallin, I spoke earlier about this today where, you have mental health coaches and you have your own assistant coaches, and usually a significant role of assistant coaches in the past has been to be able to spend time. You got kind of a favorite coach. You got coaches that had, in my day when we were coaching, we had specific players that we met with so that each coach had an opportunity to work with them. I suspect that's being taken care of, especially if it's some mental health issues and people are losing confidence. But he just doesn't appear to me to be a guy that is going to get depressed about things. I think he's a fighter, and he's going to fight through this. I am sure, whether it's a coaching staff or it's people from outside that are going to help him, buoy him up, and let him know that this isn't all on his shoulders. Right. And he's, they've been together for 2 years almost now. Yeah. And I just love the young man, and I believe in him, but his misses lately have been significantly awry. Okay, I mean, there were times and nights where he just drilled 2 or 3 in a row, but he's got to get that back. And what athlete doesn't go through slumps, whatever your sport is?
Right.
And I'm hoping that, and I'm sure they are, the coaching staff spending time watching film. That was the number one thing for me, was when I had guys that were really struggling, me as a head coach, I'd go in, we'd go have lunch, we'd go in and watch film for an hour. And I'm telling you what, it made all the difference in the world.
Do you spend more time on, hey, let's watch some stuff where you had success and let's remember that? Or do you spend some time going, more time going, let's look at where you struggled, and hey, here's a couple of things about when you were struggling that were different than you. Which do you spend more time on, or what's the balance on that?
I think you have to find a balance, to be honest with you. Let's go back to when we were in a groove and the shot looked good. And you can look at the technical part of a shot. We got video. You can play it forward. You can play it backwards.
Frame by frame.
Frame by frame.
Yeah, your release went to this instead of this. Like,
exactly.
What happened?
And were your legs involved? Was it you weren't ready to shoot, but you did? Those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things that you'll look at on film to do that, but I think that's really important. But I also think when it comes from a head coach or an associate head coach, and there's empathy there, and there is letting them know that we have faith in who you are as a person and as a player, and that you're the captain of this team, one of the captains as a point guard. You may not have that official calling, but when you're the point guard, you're one of the captains.
You're running the show out there.
Yeah. So I'm optimistic that he'll have a breakout. It may not be against Kansas now. Who knows? But I cannot see this continuing.
Yeah, he's going to turn it and get going again.
Yeah.
But who else? Like, we're all really impressed with Dallin Hall in his second year, and just look at him with an unbelievably bright future as one of the top point guards in this league. Who else has impressed you on this squad where you've just maybe even pleasantly surprised about a player?
That's a good question. I think. Well, let me share a dynamic between Khalifa and Foose. Okay. Because I've really appreciated the maturity of both of them. And I've never spoken to Khalifa. I mean, I was in a couple of team deals and we shook hands, but I don't really know him. I know Foose a little bit better. But what has really impressed me as those two have worked together, and when I talk about chemistry, I saw Foose the other night on the bench, and he was supportive and doing things, and he wasn't playing much. And it was just one of those nights where he wasn't going to be. Khalifa hit 3 or 4 threes, and I loved the chemistry between the players that I've seen. I think it's important to get through difficult times and to go through these things. That's one of the things, the maturity of these guys. I also like the connection between the team. They're so honest and supportive. I've watched practices, and they're just there for each other. And I think that instills confidence. And so if somebody's down, they go and pick them up, and you just got to do that. But the idea that this is going to go away instantly, that may not be the path here. And it may be after somebody else. I mean, maybe Jackson has to play a little more point guard. Maybe Spencer has to play. Trey Stewart's gotten a few minutes lately. And, and I actually like the energy he brings. He can get up and
Trey's come out and really defended.
Yeah.
My unsung hero, I'm interested in your take because I'm wondering where his career goes. Richie Saunders, to me, is a guy we don't talk enough about. What are your thoughts on Richie Saunders?
I love Richie Saunders. So you can't be a lover of this game and not love his effort and his competitiveness, his ability in the moment to make big shots or get a rebound. And you have to have guys like that. Those are the guys that help you win championships. And he comes under the radar a little bit too.
Yeah, he's fearless, but nobody really talks about him.
But it's one of those things where he's probably not on the top 5 or 6. We got to worry about this guy. This guy does this, and then there's Richie. But he always seems to have, when he plays 20 or 22 minutes, 8 or 10 points, 6 rebounds, dives on the floor for loose balls, all of the things that you would want in a player like that. So I'm glad you brought Richie up because he's just fun to watch, and he's just so competitive, and I love him and Dallin. There's 2 competitive brothers that will get after it. But I also do know that when you lose your confidence, you lose a little bit of the energy that comes with it as well. And so hopefully they're working through that, and he'll come out. And like I said, it may not be tonight, but he will come back.
Former BYU head basketball coach Steve Cleveland's on the Wise Guys tonight. Won 138 games during his 8 years at BYU between 1997 and 2005, and 92 more wins as head coach at Fresno State. So we've asked you this question a bunch of times because we used to interview you before the games. The keys to the game tomorrow for BYU to beat Kansas. What do you got?
When you're on the road, don't allow second chance points. When you get a stop, and you can't allow them to get second chance points. And it appears that maybe one of their better players is not going to be playing. But that was something that would be really important to me. Number 2 is that be patient, because usually games like this, big games, home team, lots of noise, just kind of be still, be patient, and I think patience will help you because there are times. I was talking earlier today on the radio about our trip to New Mexico and to UTEP our first year, which we probably don't have time enough.
When you rolled out the black uniforms the first time.
Exactly. But I can remember that the heart of that team and those young men and the miracle of driving a bus to Vegas and flying in and getting at 2 a.m. and all those things. And, it was funny because in that setting, and it's so different here where you got an established ranked team and you got a first year, but really the principles are the same. And I just said, yeah, you got to believe this. I believe it. We've played better. Well, I think somebody told me the other day in that realm, we'd lost like 10 out of 11 games going into that.
Yeah.
So we're giving, and I'm kind of like, do I really mean this? I'm going to go out and promise them that they play hard, they can win? No, I'm not going to do that. But I really feel good about the next step. And then it happens. It happens. And, and so you don't know what can happen. But I would just say be patient, run your stuff. I think a big key is how the Khalifa, Foose, Traore, how they play together. What's going to happen here when the other night when Khalifa had a hard time?
Yeah, he struggled.
He really struggled, and Foose had a chance to go in there. To me, and I'm hoping that this is happening, but with assistant coaches or mental health coaches. But those are 2 guys that seem pretty squared away. I watch them on the bench when I'm sitting there looking at the bench, and it's one of those things that I feel like it's going to be really important to go in there and win. They're both going to have to play well. And if Khalifa is making threes, then they're a different team to guard. There's space.
You've got to get out on them with your 5, and that destroys your rotations, right?
And it opens the floor,
right?
And so the guys can go and penetrate and kick and have open shots. So I think those 3 things would be on my mind right now for that game. But Khalifa, both he and Foose have a big responsibility in this game because they do have some size. Now, I'm not sure about the guy that's out, but I remember watching Kansas a couple of times. They got a guy 7'2".
They got the 7'2" guy from Michigan.
So they have some
he's in.
Yeah, he's in.
People have asked me this week, Coach. They said, "Hey, can BYU go in and beat these guys?" And I said, "Well, I have to ask you what you're asking me. Like, do I think they're going to go in and beat Kansas? No, I don't."
Yeah.
Would I be like flabbergasted if they did? No, I wouldn't be flabbergasted if they did. That's very much like that's this league, and that's BYU. The way they shoot the ball at times, they have a chance to beat anybody on a given night.
No question.
And so, do I expect them to beat Kansas tomorrow? No. If they beat them and they shoot 45% from three and 52% from the field, will that blow my mind? No, it won't blow my mind. I would go, yeah, that's what they do when they shoot well. Is that crazy for me to think like that?
No, I think it's realistic. It's real. And I've watched this team be down, come back, seen them lose leads, look really dicey, and win it at the end. So, no, they have the tools. The skill set of this team is really good. And when you have the shooting that they have, anything can happen. So you can be down by 12 or 13, come back, knock a few down. It's harder on the road. When you're at home and you're down 12 or 13, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
The crowd can help you turn that thing around. But on the road, it takes a mature, and I'm going to say very patient team to just stay with what you know is right, and you'll have a chance at the end to win.
Steve Cleveland's with us on the Wise Guys, live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wiseguys.com. According to the Big 12 today, if the conference tournament started after Wise Guys wraps up tonight, BYU would start as the second seed, or a second day as the 8th seed, against Texas, the 9 seed, a team they beat in Provo. How do you feel about that matchup?
I think Texas is playing better.
Yeah, they are right now, aren't they? Their guards are good.
And, Coach, I won't get into this, but I've known that staff, and I've known those coaches from my days at Fresno State.
He was at Fresno. We covered him there.
We actually had a pretty good relationship, and I spent a lot of time kind of telling him about all the challenges he was about to face. But he's done a nice job there. And the way, a head coach gets fired, he takes over as the interim and becomes a head coach. I couldn't be happier for him. That's going to be a really tough test. I think that Texas is better. Not that BYU can't beat them. Of course they can beat them. But, again, these are now all of a sudden it's neutral site games. Now, mind you, BYU did play a couple of those preseason. Yeah. Did well.
Yeah, North Carolina State was a big win.
That was a big win. So it's not like they're not accustomed to that. But it's not going to be worse than playing at their gym at Texas's Place.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. This is way better than that. Yeah. And I just don't think those kinds of things are going to bother this BYU team, which I feel mentally and emotionally is really mature.
You heard us. You were here when we were talking about the fact that we all had said if they're 9-9 and in the league, when it's all said and done, we think that's great for the first year of the Big 12, right? So if they do finish out here 2-2 these last 4 games and they end up 9-9, let's take it a step further. What kind of a seed do you think they get in the NCAA tournament if they can? So let's say they lose both away games and they win both home games. They finish 9-9 in regular. And let's say they get 1 win in the tournament. How high could they be seeded?
I think everything I've seen is around being a 6 or a 7 seed. Okay. And I don't know if it matters how you lose in a conference tournament or not.
Right.
I don't think how you play. I mean, they have such a body of work that the committee can look at, and they have really good wins, and they've won away from their building, and like you said, those 2 games in Vegas will be something that we're going to check that box. We're going to check that box that they took care of business there, and they survived a team that was picked 13th in the conference preseason. Has just gone 9-9 and finished 7th or 8th place.
And three wins against ranked teams right now, right?
Yeah, yes, and maybe some more.
Right.
But I think they probably do if we're asking ourselves, we're going to have, who do you think? I think it's probably going to be a 2-2 deal. Now, would I like it to be 3-1 or 4-0?
Sure.
Yes, probably not going to happen.
If you think about it, they beat Iowa State, they're number 6.
Yes.
They beat San Diego State, they're back up to number 17, I think. And they beat Baylor, who's number 14. They had Houston with a wide open 3 to steal that game late.
Yep.
Right.
And Houston's the new number 1 team.
Yeah. No, I think the committee sees this. I don't think there's going to be, no matter what happens, I think they're going to be in that, hey, if they go 3-1 and win a couple games, maybe they're a 4 or 5 seed.
Right.
But I think realistically, I see them around 6, and I don't even think it matters what happens. If they go 2-2, win a game, I don't think that changes anything.
Then they still are around a 6.
6,
And a 6 gets an 11 seed.
Exactly.
Right. And they can win a game in advance.
Oh, come on.
And did any of us think that was going to happen this first year of the Big 12? I didn't.
No, I didn't either. In fact, what we've watched has been pretty special. And I think that the fun part of the tournament is that, you've played so many meaningful games and had to perform in moments where it was big time needed. And I don't think the NCAA tournament really, other than the hoopla and everything else, it's not going to be nearly as tough as playing in this league. There's no way. I just don't think there is. Unless you get a really hot, 11 or 10 seed,
right.
Going, oh man, I didn't really want to play them.
Yeah.
What you took the Cougars to the NCAA tournament. This team is young, with a lot of guys coming back next year. Just the ramifications. What does it mean to a program to qualify in the NCAA tournament? We're talking about a 5 or a 6 seed, which is fantastic. But just being in, what does that mean to a coach who's building for the future since you've done it?
It was really special. I don't, unless you live through it and go through it and had to overcome a lot of the things that we had to overcome, from recruiting challenges to getting an in-state player to, performing. And I think that year with McKelly and that group, that 4th year, where, we win the Mountain West Conference, we win the Mountain West Conference tournament, which hasn't happened since.
No, it hasn't.
Hopefully, I don't know if it's going to be any easier in the Big 12. but that being said, there's some things I look back at that. I was so proud of where we were in that moment and winning that championship and then getting to the tournament. And, I'll be the first, and Dave's sitting here with me right now, he'd say the same thing. It's like, it was so new to us, and it was one of those things where it wasn't like we didn't prepare and watch a ton of film. What we probably needed to do to get these kids to relax and just breathe and enjoy this moment, And it was a competitive game against Cincinnati early, and then they kind of went away from us. And then the other 2 times we were in the tournament, it came down to last possessions, and that was disheartening. But it was still, there was so much joy in climbing a mountain and being there for a moment, and you just build on that. And I think that's what this program has done. And there's been a few hills and valleys for all the coaches that have been there. But I think that it's a special thing to go to the tournament, man. And you can't take it for granted. There's, I don't know, what is there, 375 or 80 teams in Division I basketball.
Yeah.
And I think the number's perfect. And I just believe that when you get there, you expect more of yourself the next time.
Everyone wants that one shining moment.
Yeah, they do. They really do.
That's cool. Steve Cleveland's with us, so we're glad you're back in Utah. Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah.
So we, June of this year, we came back to Fresno. I had a son, Skylar, who lives in Provo.
Yeah.
And then my son, Casey, was in Clovis with my daughter. My daughter's husband got a job at Reevely Engineering up in Salt Lake, and he'd been in that business. And as soon as my daughter told my wife that they were moving, my wife turned to me and says, "We're selling the house."
Going back to Utah
that fast.
And Casey wasn't far behind. So it's been great to have them here. And I probably averaged 5 to 6 AAU, or from the 8-year-olds to the high school kids, were a lot of games to watch. That's been fun. I've actually been involved in a project that I'm really excited about. It kind of involves a book, but it involves PowerPoint presentations that I can do. And we haven't started. It's going to start in March, but Sunday evening type firesides that kind of a metaphor for sport, metaphor for our spiritual development. I've not been this excited in a while, and it's just been fun to develop it. I've got a really good partner that's way smarter than I am, and he's great with images. So we're going to kick it off here, and I'll be doing that probably. Have you
guys got a name yet for the program? And can you announce it? No. Like Dave can't tell us who's on Stadium Fire, and you can't tell us the name of this program.
We got dates we can, or is it there's going to be a concert shirt of all your dates you're doing this, or what?
No, probably not. But I spent so much time with young people in my life. Yeah. From an ecclesiastical side, as a mission president and as a bishop of a YSA ward, and I just have a love for those kids. And I know, because I had the same issues they've had. And so it's something that I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but I need to give back here. I have been very blessed and to be given opportunities in my life. And I feel like our message to these young people is going to be obviously faith-based, but it's going to involve a lot of sport. And I got the guy that's got the coolest images I've ever seen to kind of help me with this thing, and he'll lead me and guide me around. And then eventually there's going to be a book. That might be a book for my family and friends. It might be something that gets some traction and youth are interested in it, but we'll see.
Well, when the book comes, then you come back on and we're going to preview the book.
And when you get some dates ready to announce,
I will.
We'll pass them on to everybody.
Hey, wait, do you still keep in contact with Paul George much? Do you talk to Paul a lot?
Yeah, I went to both the games in Utah and had a chance to talk to him a little bit.
And Paul played for you at Fresno State.
Yeah, like what people don't, like Paul, and I told you this, I think back when it happened, but this was during the pandemic, and he and Kawhi were in town to play the Jazz, and I ran into, and Kawhi I've known for a long time because we covered him when he was at San Diego State, right? So we all had masks on, and the two of them were walking together out of a meeting, and I go, Kawhi, and he looks at me like, and I pull my mask, and I go, it's Blaine. And he's like, oh, what's going on? And he comes over, and Paul's just standing over there. Right. And I turned to Paul, and I said, you and I have a very dear common friend, Steve Cleveland. He came like right over and gave me a hug, and then he just went, Steve Cleveland is one of my favorite people in the world. I love Steve. It was like so fun so immediately he and I had this connection because he owes so much to Coach Cleveland and just raved about how you gave him direction, set him on the right path, and how much he appreciated you. It was so cool for me.
He is a great young man. I remember when their family came in to tell me he was leaving early. And it was nothing but tears there, with his parents. And they were apologizing to me because we were like 1 year away from turning this thing, But I just think of who he is and who he's become. It makes me proud to say I had an opportunity. I will say this, on our presentation, there's lots of images. And two really unique images, as this guy found, was one, Paul and Kawhi guarding Paul in a game at Fresno State.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a cool image. And then we have a few with Paul Duncan, and we have the dunk at St. Mary's.
Oh, yeah.
When we had that one at midnight. And but I also have one, and I told Tyler about this because Tyler is coaching AAU group, Tyler Haas I'm speaking about. And I said, listen, I got a fun photo for you. And I said, it's Paul George dunking on you.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I said, here's the all-time leading scorer and amazing guy. I love Tyler Haas, but we got to laugh about it. I said, I'll get you a copy.
That's so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Steve?
and he's had that, Coach has had that influence on a lot of people. I just thought people will know who Paul is because he's been an all-star and one of the best players in the NBA, but he loves you, man. It was awesome.
Thanks.
It was awesome.
Before Steve Cleveland announces his best 5-point guards of all time, you worked that list.
Oh, yeah.
Since we started talking about point guards coming in. Before we do that, let me say, and Connor Pay is going to join us in just a few. We'll talk football. So I'm at the BYU UC Davis baseball series over the weekend. Okay. And there's this old codger that always showed up to watch UC Davis go through batting practice, and I'm killing time.
He says codger affectionately.
Yeah. And so then I go over and we start talking, and turns out he'd coached at UC Davis, but he played football back in the 50s for Fresno State.
Wow.
And when he said Fresno State, I said, well, one of my friends is Steve Cleveland. He was the basketball coach at Fresno State. And he kind of, and I go, he came in to clean up after Jerry Tarkanian. And he just started laughing. He just goes, Jerry Tarkanian. And then he started telling stories which are so crazy they had to be true. But the world just got really, really small. And in that exchange, the connection was he was football, but it was basketball, and then there's you and Fresno State, which goes on and on and on. But you had a key role in getting those guys squared away. You got BYU squared away, and you got them squared away.
We did. That was the hardest thing I've ever been involved in my life, and things didn't play out the way I thought.
Yeah.
Not just Paul leaving, but I remember going to San Antonio to the NCAA. We met with the president of the NCAA we were going to see if we were going to get the death penalty at Fresno State for all the infractions. And I remember being there, and I remember the president of the NCAA saying, Coach Cleveland, you'll be the one and only person. I'm sitting next to my president and my AD. He says, you got 20 minutes to tell me how you going to change that culture, And so I shared it, and he, basically he said, in 6 weeks we'll let you know whether you have the death penalty or what other infractions are. So, I felt bad because I'm just brand new there.
Right.
They're not talking to the president or the AD.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah.
And I should have probably done more due diligence on that. But
hey,
anyway,
who knew?
Whatever you said worked.
Yeah. So anyway, we get 6 years of probation. We get the thing that killed us was could only recruit freshmen. Now, do you know a Fresno State team in the last 100 years that doesn't have JUCOs and I mean, even in an era today, it wouldn't be a big deal because NIL's there; it's making it happen.
And when you were at Fresno State College, you provided some of those great transfers that went to Fresno State.
Well, in fact, we got one. We're going to talk about point guards in a minute, but I mean, Rafer Alston,
yes,
I coached him for a year. He had been a Ventura the year before. He played for Jerry at Fresno State in 14 years, 12 years in the NBA. And I, just because I'm going to talk a little bit about him, but I just thought there's a kid that grew so much, and so that's what you do look at. I mean, I had so many great experiences at Fresno, but it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
And looking back, I mean, and the hardest thing was the guys I had recruited. The Jonathan Tavanaris, the Lee Camards, the Trent Playstead and Keena, all those guys, and I have my moments at night where I just kind of go, wow, that hurts, But I've made contact with those guys and be a part of their lives, and then I love Dave, and I.
Yeah. And he kept it going.
Oh no!
Yep, you set it back on its feet when it was laying flat down on its face.
It was so exciting to be with him at that Hall of Fame. We had all sorts of coaches and former players, and
saw Dave Rice get up there.
Yeah,
that was good.
It was just so much fun to be there and to see his success. And listen, we pull for each other. Dave, we know it's very well documented. He's had some health issues. And, I just love the man. I love how he helped me, and I love what Mark's doing right now. I think they found a good place, and they'll grow and get better. And what a great opportunity to be in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 5 best point guards of all time from the great Steve Cleveland.
Here we go. Are you going to go 5? Are you going to go 5 to 1? Yeah, let's go 5 to 1. I want to have the big reveal.
This is the NBA guys.
Could be
right.
we'll open up the whole world.
I'll give you my sidelight here. So number 5 is Oscar Robertson.
We're writing these down.
The big O. I'm writing them down.
Yeah.
So 14 years in the league, 12-time NBA All-Star, 11-time. Played for Cincinnati, played for the Bucks, averaged 25, 7, and 9. He did not win any championships, but he did want something that will never be done. He averaged a triple-double the entire 1961-62 season.
That is crazy.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And the reason he's at 5 and probably could be a little bit higher is that when he played, the league itself wasn't very good. Offensively, defensively, it just wasn't. So I didn't want to put him up where I have these other guys.
Yeah, okay. So 5 is Oscar Robertson, the big O.
Number 4, Isaiah Thomas. 13 years in the league, 12-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, 19-3-9. Huge heart, fierce competitor, got the famous Bad Boys. He won 2 NBA titles. And for me, that's a key issue. If they don't feel a lot of the other boys and won 2 titles and you're the point guard, then that's where they're at. Now,
it started with him in Indiana. He was outstanding at Indiana.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, all these we talked about college point guards. Guess what? All the guys that were really good in college are the same guys that were really good in the NBA.
Imagine that. All right,
so
number 3.
This one might surprise you, but before I became a Laker fan, living in Los Angeles.
DJ, do you need to adjust Steve's mic?
Okay, here we go. I'm sorry, I'm walking around here like I'm at home.
He's long-legged. He's a long-legged basketball guy.
All right, sorry about that. So, I love this guy watching him play, Walt Frazier.
Guess what? I just saw Clyde.
Did you?
I was in Madison Square Garden in a Knicks game a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he was there. And we were right close. And was that dude dressed?
Oh, yeah.
He had like ostrich shoes on and this outfit. I'm like, that's Clyde right there. So, yes, I love that one.
He played for the Knicks 67 to 77. Then I guess he played for 3 or 4 years with the Cavs. I didn't know that. But again, 7-time NBA All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, all defensive team 7 times. 2 titles.
Yeah.
2 titles. The best defending point guard ever at that position. That dude was a stud. He averaged 18 and almost 19, 6 and 6. NBA Hall of Fame, obviously, as Isaiah and Oscar are as well. But I love watching him.
Yeah.
And when you're living in California and you're watching the Knicks games,
because
it's late sometimes. But I love Walt. Number 2, John Stockton.
John Stockton at number 2.
So I put him at 2 because I felt like to be number 1, you got to win some titles. And so 13 years in the league, 10-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA, 5-time. He averaged 13, 3, and 10. He was an elite passer, high basketball IQ, smart shooter. And there's a difference between a good shooter and a smart shooter, taking shots at the right time. And I don't think people realize how tough a competitor he was. And I think he kind of took on Coach Sloan's toughness in his mentality and made him an all-star. I was at a couple of those Jazz games when we had first gotten hired and saw some of those games, just heartbreaking. But the thing that the guy that's number one is going to be number one.
See, I've already written my.
I know who number one is, but go ahead.
I haven't seen your list.
Yeah, number one, Magic Johnson.
Yeah. Yes,
has to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, Michigan State, 1979 NCAA champions. He was tournament MVP. He was the number one pick of the Lakers in '79. He was 13 years, and we all, it's pretty well documented. He had health issues and could have probably played longer. 12-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA, 3-time NBA Finals MVP. Only other two people to do that were who?
And one time you played center.
Yes. Oh, no.
Remember that?
To win a play. Oh, no. Yeah. I watched all those games.
Yeah.
But who are the other two people that have three?
Michael, Magic, and
LeBron.
Yeah.
All MVPs of the tournament. So here's the thing also. He won 5 NBA championships, 9 appearances in the finals.
Wow.
In the toughest era of the NBA.
Because that's when the
90s.
Celtics were great. The Sixers were great.
It was you
The
had,
Knicks were even decent.
The Pistons were good even during that.
Yeah, they were. And so he went 19-7 career stats. The ability, you just mentioned it, to play all 5. They don't win that NBA title unless he plays the 5-man.
He plays 5 in that game.
Yeah. And then obviously inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame in 2002.
You love this.
That's a good list.
I was sitting backstage with Pat Riley one time waiting for him to do a talk. Yeah. And I just said, who's the greatest player of all time? And it was interesting. He was like, well, it's just like, it depends on what the criteria is. He just didn't want to. He goes, I think everybody would probably agree with me, and this was a few years ago, but that Michael's probably the greatest player. He goes, now, if you're going to ask me who I'm going to draft first, if I could do an all-time draft, I might take Magic. And he goes, because I can't think of a player that makes every one of his teammates better more than Magic Johnson.
Absolutely.
And so he's like, is it who I'm drafting first, or who's the greatest player? Or because it gets really iffy when I do that, which I thought was really an interesting comment.
And he could play so many positions and delivered the ball in different ways. And I would do the same thing. He would be my first pick.
Yeah, you'd pick him because you could build around him.
Because you can build a team with him. Not that you can't. Michael could carry a team himself.
Sure.
But somebody had to pass him the ball. Somebody had to do those kinds of things that he couldn't do for himself.
That's an impressive list. The great Steve Cleveland.
Awesome.
Thank you for being on our show tonight.
You're welcome.
Fantastic stuff.
So good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Getting ready for the Kansas game tomorrow and the rest of the season, and we expect to have you back many times now that you're back being a Utah resident.
And when the book tour starts, actually when the tour starts, we want you to come back on and tell us more detail about it.
Yeah, I will.
And about the book.
I'll be a little nervous for a while, but it's something that I want to do. I think it's something that's needed at that age group, and hopefully I can share some light on that.
When the bright lights come on, that's your thing.
Yeah. Hey, if Dave will tell us who is going to play at Stadium Fire, then you tell us the name of the book.
No. I'll tell you both that.
After.
But at the end of the day, I'm going to need to know that. You're going to text me tonight. I'll delete
one
it
of
right
the
after.
3 of us has been sworn to secrecy, and it's not either of you guys. That's one thing I know.
I'll think of a secret to tell both of you guys.
Hey, will you introduce yourself to Connor Pay over there when you head over? That's the starting center of the football team. Yes. Steve Cleveland, former Cougar coach, Fresno coach, and a BYU TV broadcaster, and one of our longtime friends. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it
Coach.
so much.
Great to see you, brother.